Namo Shakyamuni Buddha. So today we continue to study about the Eightfold Paths, the prayer concentrations, and last time we discussed how to practice uh, the breath meditation. So we know that when we have the breath meditation, that is the practice that could help us to bring us back to ourselves, to recognize what's going on in this physical body. Because usually we are pulled by all kind of external conditions, like when we see something beautifully or ugly, our mind would be pulled away from those signs. But if someone says something that may irritate us, we would not pay attention on our feeling. So that's why the first step ever for us to recognize who we are, to recognize our sensation, our feeling, uh, and even our own thoughts. We would start with the concentration on the breath. So we discuss some techniques how to focus our mind on the breath. And today I like to discuss further some type of breaths that we need to pay attention. So in Buddhist traditions, there are several types of breaths, but in general, according to Ji, a Tin Thai master in the 4th or 5th centuries in China, he laid out or recognized 4 types of breaths generally. The first one, what he called windy breathing. And that means when one sitting and one senses the presence of the sound of the breath coming to and go forth from the nose. This is the windy breathing. That means when we inhale and exhale, we hear some kind of sound that coming out of our nose. And that's what we call windy breath. And the next one is what we call uneven breathing. That means when we are sitting, even though the breaths make no sound, but they still are catching and stopping, so that we have some kind of asthma that we could not breathe evenly and naturally. So that's considered as uneven breathing. The next type of breath is categorized as ordinary breathing. That means when we are sitting, even though we don't have any sound that coming to our nose or going out our nose, or even we don't have any kind of catching or stopping, but it's not subtle yet. So that is called ordinary breathing. So the last type is subtle respiration. That means there's no sound, no catching, and no coarseness. So the inhalations and exhalations of the breath go in and out of our body smoothly and extend through a periods of time, such as we are in stillness, but it's still there. So that moment we feel more peace and content. So that is the mark of subtle respiration. So he suggests that if we have windy breathing, that means it's easy for us to have a scattered mind because like explained before, the mind and the body affect each other, and the breath is considered as the thermometers of the mind and the body. So when we have windy breathing, that's indication that we have scattered mind. So when we have uneven breathing, that means somehow our physical and mental state become stuck. So if we maintain the ordinary breathing, so somehow might be tired easily. If we maintain the subtle respiration, then eventually we would enter meditative absorption. So if while we sitting, we recognize the first three types of breaths, like windy, uneven, or ordinary breathings. So there are indications of inadequate adjustment. So in this case, we have to make some kind of effort mentally so that we can bring the mental disturbance and obstruction of the mind to enter the meditative absorption. So first, if we want to transport them, remember we don't need to manipulate them. So at first, we need to stabilize our mind by anchoring our mind within our body, whether it's around our abdomen, stomach, or solar points, depend upon uh, how we like to focus our mind, how to anchor our mind. And secondly, we need to relax and release the body from any kind of tense pressure. And thirdly, we need to visualize the breath penetrating through all the pores, going for and coming in our body without any obstruction whatsoever. So if we recognize our breath eventually become more deep and subtle, that is a good sign for us to recognize as eventually we can enter meditative absorption or concentration. So in practicing breath meditation, there's some special skill that we need to have, and of course they will be developed naturally throughout the times. The more we practice, the easier for us to get used of those techniques, how to tackle or deal with those problems. But we know that when we have deep breath and long breath, whether it's inhalation, exhalations, we recognize as that's a time we could eventually enter the meditative absorption. So again, we just use some methods like we just discussed recently. We may anchor our mind so that it would not fly up everywhere. It's like the boat or the ship that need the anchor to stay in one place so that the winds or the current of waters would not blow them away. So those are mine. So if we eventually could focus our mind on the breath and it become deeper and deeper, and subtler and subtler, that's a sign that eventually we can enter samadhi or deep concentration. At that moment, we would recognize what's going on in our physical body. So we at first may use some experience, meaning if our mind have all kind of thoughts, we may count the breaths. So by counting the breaths is just help us to register how many breaths that come into our body and go in our body, so that we be more aware of them. But remember, counting is just the means, not the goal. So depend upon everyone wish, we can count from 1 to 10. Let's say when we inhale and exhale, naturally we count 1. Inhale, exhale, naturally we count 2. Inhale, exhale, naturally we count 3. And we count until 10. After 10, we count or start with 1 again. So at first we can start with 1 minute, and if we really focus on that kind of counting, and if we don't miss any count, so we may increase that minute by 2. And within that couple minutes, if we could count correctly without miscounting, so we can increase by 3. So according to my own experience, for the beginners, it's easy for them to focus count the breath in the first, the second, and third minutes. But when it comes to the 4 minutes and up, sometimes it will be challenging for them. But still, if they have strong determinations to focus their mind, they will get used to that. But again, let's say if we could count continuously without miscounting for 4 minutes or 5 minutes, that's great. But let's say if while we counting the breath for the minutes of 3, so somehow we miscount because there's some thought that pulls away from counting the breath. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. This comes naturally because we have all kind of thoughts that occupy our mind due to our interaction between the five sense and the external conditions, like the eyes see the signs, the ears hear the sound, and so forth. So whenever we see them, our eyes serve as a camcorder, camera. That's why they capture those pictures, image, and register in our consciousness. And so when we hear the sound, whether it's pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, again, our ears serve as the decoders that record all the sounds that we have listened to. So when we calm down our mind, those image, pictures, um, and so forth reappears in our mind again. That's why if we don't count and focus our mind on the breath, we will be easily pulled away from those image or sounds. For example, let's say in the morning we walk down on the street, and if we look up some special signs or some kind of activities that happen on the street, and so when we get back, the moment while we sitting, those image or sounds may reappear in the mind again, and they will pull us away because somehow that is a strong force that makes us to remember those image or sounds. But if we bring our mind back to our breath and we count or rest our breath, those image or sounds, even they still there, but they serve as the background noises. They would not bother us anymore, and eventually they would be disappear in our mind if we remain determination to focus on our breaths. So it takes time. So we don't need to spend 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours sitting there without using the breath meditation, breath counting techniques. Otherwise, if we sit there without using implements this breath counting, it's easy for our mind to be pulled away from all kind of informations, image or sound that we have registered in our consciousness. So it's better to start with a minute. And if we really focus on that minute, we need to add another minute. And if we really focus and count the breath during that couple minutes, we may increase to 3 minutes. And if we really focus and count our breath correctly within that 3 minutes, we will increase by 4. And if we really focus our mind on that breaths for 4 minutes, we will increase the time for 5 minutes. Again, if somehow we miscount during that period of time, we can gently bring back our mind to count our breath until we really focus and count the breath correctly within that 5 minutes. Again, if we are comfortable with count the breath within that 5 minutes, we will increase another minutes to 6 minutes. And again, if we miscount during that 6 minutes, just gently bring back our mind to the counting of the breath. Again, if we really focus on that 6 minutes, we can add another minutes. That's means 7 minutes. Again, we can work and add 1 minute each time, so that we can focus our mind on the breath counting. And let's say if we increase up to 10 minutes and there's no miscounting at all, yes, we have another minutes. That means 11 minutes. So eventually, if we can add 1 minute at a time, let's say until 30 minutes, and within that 30 minutes, we really count our breath correctly. Uh, we can increase by another minute. That means 31 and so forth. Let's say until 1 hour. And within that hour, we would not have any miscounting. We know clearly, or we are aware clearly how the breath come in and out of our body. So at that time, either we just follow our breath, or we continue to count our breath. So depend upon each individual. If we want to count the breath straight, if we really recognize or aware of our breath, so at that time we don't need to count anymore. So at that moment we just follow the breath. We just aware of every breath that we have that come in our body. And as soon as we are aware of breath, eventually we would aware of our sensation, our feeling, whether it's good feeling, a bad feeling, or neutral feeling, whichever feeling we have. So like if while we're sitting there, sometimes we hear someone have some kind of argument with each other on the street. At that moment, we may have bad feeling about them. Again, we recognize that bad feeling without any reaction. We don't need to react anything, just having that recognition, that's enough. And we may recognize the energy that flowing our body. We may recognize the heart energy that flowing around our body. We may recognize how chest move up and down within our body. We may recognize our stomach move in and out, up and down within our body. So with that type of recognition, eventually we develop some type of awareness within our body, and eventually we can recognize our own thoughts. Whenever the thoughts pop up, whether it's good thought, a bad thought, whether it's angry thought, a happy thought, you could recognize them clearly. So as soon as we have that skill, so we can let them go without any kind of attachment. So after finishing the meditation section, when we deal with other people, when we interact with other people, whichever thing they say, whichever thing they do, whether it's good or bad, positive or negative, of course, we may follow the habit patterns to react. But as soon as we recognize our own thought, we would let go of them much easier than before. For example, if they say something that have some negative intention, so at that moment we recognize that type of unpleasant sound, and instead of letting our mind analyzing, making the judgment about that type of sentence, expression, we just let go of that thought and we come back with our breath, and eventually we keep that kind of peacefulness within our mind. So again, that is the practice of breath meditation, and it could be applied in any circumstances. We can practice this breath meditation anywhere, because the breath is within our body until we don't reach life. So whether while we are driving, whether while we are sitting, or whether while we are cooking, washing dishes, sweeping floor, and so forth, we can bring back our mind to the breath and being aware of them. And we may be aware of our feeling, sensation. We may be aware of our thoughts, and that means we could know who we are. We could know whichever thing we say, whichever thing we do, and so forth. So we live with this kind of concentration, focusing. So we would not make any comments that may be irritated toward other people. We would not do anything that cause the harm to others, and we live with a mindful life. Whether we are sitting in meditation, or whether we are walking, standing, lying down, and so forth. So later on, when we talk about the mindfulness practice, we will review about breath meditation one more times. Plus, on the top of that, we may talk about the mindfulness of walking, of standing, of lying down, what we call body scan. So let us focus on samatha's meditation, the subject of concentrations. So again, we just finished the discussion, expression about breath meditation. In Buddhism, there's another type of concentration. We can focus our mind, what we call the subject of concentration. The next one is what we call the peace. So in Buddhism, it says that if we have a peaceful mind, we would have a peaceful life. And if we have violent mind, we will have a violent life. So whichever thing happening in our mind will be expressed actively and verbally. And so that's why when we could utilize the breath techniques to refocus our mind and to calm our body, our life would be more peaceful. Otherwise, if we don't know how to transform our body and mind, especially the mind, it's easy for us to follow the same patterns of having aggression toward other people when we interact with them. For example, when we heard someone criticize us, someone curse us, or hit us violently. So if we don't have any mind training, especially breath meditation, it's easy for us to react. That means when they yell at us, uh, it's easy for us to yell back. When they harm us, it's easy for us to harm them back. So eventually it creates the vicious cycle of reaction, of harming each other. That's why if we start with now meditation, when we deal with those kind of violent, harmful people, we could react in a peaceful and calm way. So in the Buddhist sutras, Dhammapada, the Buddha said that all fear death, none are afraid of stick and knife, sin yourself in others, don't kill, don't harm, bad words blame others, arrogance was humiliating others. So from these behaviors come hatred, resentment, therefore conflicts arise, rendering in people malicious thoughts. So again, in this Dhammapada Sutra, the Buddha mentioned that no one wants to be hit and harmed. You have to recognize that you have to see yourself in others. So don't try to harm other people. Don't try to use the negative expression to harm others. Don't show off your arrogance. Don't harbor the hatred and resentment, because it's easy to have the conflicts. And when we have the conflicts, that leads we would not have a peaceful lives. So that's why when we practice meditations, especially breath meditation, we calm our mind and we would let go of those malicious thoughts like anger, resentment, arrogance, and so forth. And as much as we let them go, they would not stimulate our speech and action to the karma. So eventually we be more peaceful person. So that's why it's so important for us to remain peaceful and concentrated, so that we could have that kind of peace in our life. So the Buddha looked at the external causes of conflicts as consequences that derive from our own mind. And so that's why he said that in order to remain a peaceful person, we need to have a peaceful mind. Otherwise, it's easy for us to harm ourselves and others with our violent minds. So that's why if we want to live an ultimately happy life with no harm to ourselves and others, we should start to transform our own mind. So when we remain calm, it's easy for us to have that kind of peaceful life, because the Buddhists see that because of greedy design, kings and kings are in conflicts, people and people region and regions, state and state are in conflicts. So that means no matter who we are, wherever we live, as long as we have a violent mind, we bring the disaster for ourselves and others. We would raise all kinds of conflicts uh, toward other people. So there's no peace. So remember, that's where war starts, when we have conflicts that we cannot resolve, and sometimes it become physical. When we try to express ourselves uh, in the negative way. That's when we try to dominate other people. We try to force them to listen to our own views. We try to oppress them if they don't follow our ways of life. That's why war occur. But the Buddha reminds us that if in any circumstances when we have conflicts with the people, even we can win, uh, but eventually we will incur the resentment toward ourselves. Um, that means other people may have a kind of resentment toward us, and if we lost the case, the cause, win that conflict, we may uh, hurt our self-esteem. And so the Buddha said that if we don't engage in a kind of conflict, uh, yeah, whether it's being winners or loser, we would sleep peacefully. Otherwise, if we engage in the situation that it's bring tremendous suffering to ourselves and others, even we are winners, still we would not have any kind of peace in our life. So that's why the Buddha said we should guard our mind carefully and maintain the mindfulness at all times. So, in order to stop any conflicts, that we need to dwell our mind in a peaceful state of mind. We need to let go of any kind of malicious thoughts like anger, resentment, jealousy, and so forth. So, besides that, as lay Buddhists would lay down the five moral conducts for us to follow. That means the first one, we abstain from killing. Second, we abstain from taking what is not given. Third, we abstain from sexual misconduct. Fourth, we abstain from false speech. And fifth, we abstain from taking intoxicant or illegal drugs, so that we can at least keep our body and mind at peace. That means we don't harm other people. And in daily life, when we interact with other people, the Buddha advised us that we would follow what we call the six harmonious principle throughout life. So when we interact with other people, we need to recognize this type of six harmonious principle throughout bodily act, verbal expression, mental uh, act of loving kindness toward other people. We need to share material gains with others, whether they are our family members our friends. That's number 4. Number 5, we follow the same code of conducts. And the last one, we hold the same views that if we maintain a peaceful mind, we would have a peaceful life. That means we would not harm others. So that's what we call the 6th harmonious principle that the Buddha reminds us to follow. So this is a story that relates to the Buddha during his lives. So there was a king that tried to invade the Buddha kingdoms, the Shakyan clans. So when that king marched his army toward the Kapilavastu palace, a city, the Buddha tried twice to stop that king because that king hatred toward the second class. He wanted to kill them all. So the first 2 times, the Buddha could convince him not to engage in any kind of killing or fighting. Out of respect, he listened to Buddha. But the 3rd times, when he marched his armies to that city, the Buddha recognized the karma has been given, so there's no way for him to stop. So eventually, that king massacred many seconds people. So later on, the Buddha delayed that event to one of the past karmas. Of course, only for the Buddhists who understand, accept, and believe in reincarnation could recognize or realize the story that the Buddha retold later on that led to that event. So the Buddha said that in the past, in a village, there was a pond during the hot season, and somehow because it's the famines happening and it's too hot, that the water in that pond will dry out. So all kind of fishes, crabs, turtles, and so forth in that ponds were exposed. And so the village, the people in that village went there and captured all fishes, crabs, turtles, and so forth, so that they could cook them and enjoy those animal flesh. And the Buddha said that those villages in the past were the Shakyan clan's people now. So those animals in the ponds, like the fishes, the crabs, the turtles, and so forth, now were the king armies. So again, that is the cause and effect that happened in the past. That's why this king somehow, because of the karma, he killed them all. So that is related to the Buddha second's clans. When we talk about in realities nowadays, story or event, Many of us know Dalai Lamas, the one that escaped from Tibet in 1959 due to the invasion of the Chinese communists. Of course, at first he proposed the middle ways, that he would run Tibet win the control of the Chinese communists. He would not declare the full independence for Tibet from China, but he would have self-governed by a democratical elected governance, as well as having the vision of Tibet as a zone of non-violence. But somehow it failed. That's why he escaped from Tibet to India. But even Chinese communists kill millions of his people and occupy his country. He still advocates non-violence and compassion principle, not to provoke any violence act against the Chinese communists. That's why in 1989 he won a Nobel Peace Prize. And so since time is up, so let me stop here today. And next time we can review again the Buddhist views about peace. Namo Shakyamuni Buddha.